My name is Marta, and I'm the massage practitioner and Reiki master teacher at Paws Massage. And this little guy is my buddy. This is Rocco. He is 11 years old, and he's not always been this chill. He's a husky after all. But as we found our groove, he really settled into his own. And a lot of the lessons I've learned um, have been because I needed to find ways to connect with him in a way that's not all, high energy. I needed to find ways to connect where we can both be in a really relaxed state and just hang out. And very often that's something that a lot of dog owners don't know how to do or can't do. Now, there's many reasons. A lot of dogs, just like people, they just don't know how to relax. Their nervous system, possibly due to previous trauma, possibly just this is their constitution, this is how they were born, they are vibrating on really high levels. And what needs to happen is they need to learn and train their nervous system to go into the parasympathetic mode. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for digestion, procreation, healing, and relaxation, sleep, learning. These are all things we can only do when we're in the parasympathetic mode. Unfortunately, again, for various reasons, just like people, some dogs are not really able to easily shift from that sympathetic, active play, mode to the relaxation mode. And this is where we need to train them, teach their body. It's a very much physiological response that can be trained. And the more you repeat it, the easier it will be for the body to settle into that state. Now, there's a few things that are really important when you're training, teaching anything, which is consistency, repetition, and creating the environment for success. And what I mean by creating the environment for success, if your dog is wired, and some dogs just don't have an off switch, they're just wired. You can't go up to them and start practicing these techniques that I'm about to teach you, because this is the equivalent of going up to a stressed out person and saying, well, just relax. Well, what effect does that have if you just tell someone, well, can't you just relax? It will really push them off the edge. So what we need to do is try and meet them at their level. What we want to do is set this up very gradually and teach them that it's actually really fun. And then as we repeat the process, the brain synapses, the nervous system will start rewiring in a way that is going to be easier and easier to get to that state. So it's kind of like building up muscle memory, right? If you're an athlete and you keep repeating, then it's easy. So what we want to start with is finding a time that our dog would naturally be in a relaxed state. Usually this will be probably after an exercise, maybe after a meal, possibly before bedtime. So just watch your dog and find a time that they're already relaxed. Now, I wouldn't be creating a separate space for this ritual unless your dog is already laid back and it's easy for you to create a space that's convenient for you. But I would say try and find an area that your dog naturally goes to relax. And even if it's their crate, try and work around just to help them be in a space that they're already comfortable. So then what we want to do is build up some triggers. Now, these triggers will be quite important because as I mentioned, we're working directly with the nervous system. So we want to use sound. I usually recommend through the dog's ear. It's I think you can find it on Spotify or YouTube. It's just music that's designed to be relaxing to the dog. Um, Possibly, if you don't have allergies, using a scent uh, most often. And if you have more questions about essential oils or using scents, please ask me because you want to make sure these are non-toxic, high-quality grade. Either lavender, frankincense, those are good ones. And scent is very, very powerful to trigger a neurological response. And I'm sure you know this, that Kit Kat is making an appearance, that sometimes you'll smell something and right away you will have a memory pop up, sometimes even an emotional response where you're like, oh, this feels like childhood, or oh, this feels like that summer day. This is the same thing. We want to associate a certain scent with the emotional state. So then let's say if you go in the car or you're in a stressful situation where your dog normally would be pretty worked up, you can use the scent to try and hopefully start accessing that neurological, that emotional response. Another thing that can be used is a blanket. So maybe use the same blanket every time. And then if you're going for a car ride, if you're taking the dog to a boarding situation, if you have a place where the dog tends to be nervous, or maybe there's fireworks, bring out that blanket, bring out the scent. But having said that, be very mindful to only bring it out when you want to trigger or at least help the dog access that emotional state. So you don't want to overuse that trigger. You don't want the blanket to just be around in the crate, in the bed, on your dog's bed. You don't want to be constantly using lavender. You don't want to be constantly using these kind of keys, because they'll lose their meaning. So you want to make sure that they are used specifically when you're trying to bring down the kind of anxious state and access a more relaxed one. A few other things that, when it comes to these little kind of prompts, reminders, you can use anything. It can be a toy. It can be a certain, if you like to sing, it can be a certain melody you hum. So really, this is really open to your imagination. Make sure it's not something that's of high value to the dog. So make sure it's not their favorite toy, because you want to avoid excitement. And even though this is positive excitement, because yay, they love toys, excitement releases the same hormones. It releases the endocrine response is exactly the same, whether it's positive or negative stress. So that's one thing that you really have to remember, that when your dog is excited, whether it be a positive or negative, it comes from physiologically, it comes from a very, very similar response. So what we're trying to do here is access the other spectrum and release different hormones, release different secretions, access different neurological pathways. Well, next I will go straight into, okay, so what do we do? Our dog is sleeping, snoozing, asking for affection. What are the actual techniques we're going to use? So Rocco here is already relaxed, and I can start with really, really gentle techniques. But let's say, your dog might be cuddly already and it's, they're settling in for a little nap, but let's say they're still kind of playful, they're still, a little bit aroused, so you don't want to go straight into the most calming. You want to kind of, and this is really important with any kind of work you're doing with animals, you have to gauge their energy levels so you can meet them at the same level, because otherwise you're really setting yourself and your dog for a kind of a energy struggle, not quite a power struggle, but you're going to try to fit a square, peg into a round hole, and it's just going to take a little bit of, it's just going to be frustrating for both of you. So let's say, they're still a little bit excited. So one of the techniques I really like to use for trying to access the nervous system and try to calm it down is rocking. And it's just like you would do with a crying baby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one hand around the withers, so around the shoulder blade or maybe just behind the shoulder blade. And my other hand, I'm going to put it on the sacrum or around the hip. And I'm going to start very gently rocking my dog. Now, the reason this works is just like with a human or a baby, this is not really a movement that we do on our own. So it kind of throws the nervous system for a loop. The nervous system goes like, what's going on? I give up. I'm just gonna shut down, not shut down, but just turn off a little bit and focus on the sensation. So what's happening is the dog is going inwards, focusing on this weird sensation. And the only time you'll see a dog actually do a similar movement is when they're shaking off. And dogs very often shake off when they're trying to release overstimulation, excitement, when they're trying to kind of shake off stress. So they kind of know what's happening, and you're already tapping into, see, and this is what I mean by getting, by meeting your dog at their energy level, because Rocco was already really relaxed and he just went like, okay, what's going on? Like, this is not the energy we're working with. So I'm just going to get him right back, but that was a perfect demonstration of what happens when you don't meet your dog at their energy level. So, if your dog is already relaxed, I would say to start with a craniosacral hold. Now, the reason we do a craniosacral hold is I was talking about these nerve connections. So there's many parasympathetic nerve bundles, but there's two bundles that are very close to the skin surface, and we can access them. And we access them through the heat of our hands, the pressure from our hands. And what that does, it kind of turns them on. And basically, you will find them at the base of the skull. And if your dog is only comfortable with one of these areas, then just use one of them. It doesn't have to be both. It works better with both, but it doesn't have to. So we're going to access it on the base of the skull and on the sacrum. Now the sacrum is that flat part. So as you go along the spine, the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and then we hit the flat, bony area between the 2 points of the hip, just at the base of the tail. So that's the dog's sacrum. And all you want to do here, again, if your dog is maybe a little bit excited, maybe still not quite settled, you can just do very gentle vibrating movements. So this is, kind of again, meeting them at their energetic level. You want to keep it very rhythmic. So the more rhythmic, the more relaxing. And again, you have to watch your dog because this can easily go from enjoyable to annoying. And this is the part of building a relationship with your dog, learning from your dog. You just have to gauge what your dog enjoys, what relaxes them. And then once you notice that they're starting to settle, you just keep your hands here. Now for this to actually start having an effect, we want to hold our hands here 3 to 5 minutes. So this is not just place your hands. We have to keep holding here for quite a while. Okay, so next we're gonna do some work on the head. Now, of course, fair warning, not all dogs like being touched on the head, so you might have to desensitize your dog to being touched on the head first before you even start with it. And then I'm also going to show some ear techniques. Now, a lot of dogs who maybe have allergies like Rocco, or who had frequent ear infections, they might be very, very sensitive around the ears. So be very, very mindful to work within their comfort levels because it simply might be painful or unpleasant for them. But most dogs do enjoy the work on the head and on the ears. So to begin, well, first of all, check with your dog and see, I call it asking permission. So basically I start petting them around the shoulder, and then I start moving my hand up and up, and I'm just reading their body to see how they're responding to it. So here I am at Rocco's head, and he's kind of like, okay. So I'll start with the work. So you want to use a flat hand, and you want to make sure your hand is really, really relaxed. So you don't want it to be rigid. You want it to kind of curve with the shape of your dog's head, and very, very, very little pressure. This is even less than eyeball pressure. You do not want to compress the neck or put any strain on the neck. So we're gonna place our hand on the top of our dog's head in between the ears, and we're gonna start doing circular movement, clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't matter, we'll do both. And you want to feel the skin moving under your hand. And you'll see that also the ears are starting to move. And then often if your dog starts getting a little bit annoyed, you can change to counterclockwise or clockwise, whichever you were doing before. And this is something that most dogs really, really enjoy, and this can be used instead of the ear work because it's already doing a little bit of massaging around the ears. So if their ears are very sensitive, this might be the only technique you can do. And then people often ask, well, how many times? In massage, the magic number is 3 to 5. I would say, maybe 5 circles clockwise, 5 circles counterclockwise, but also see your dog. If your dog is really, really enjoying it and starting to settle and relax and they're in the zone, keep going. This really is about you trying to find what is it that relaxes your dog. Okay, so then we can go straight into working with the ears a little bit. So what I do is I'll gently grab the ear, and by grab, I don't actually grab and hold on to it. I place my hand at the base of the ear and I start doing circles here. So same thing as the top of the skull. I will do 5 clockwise and then 5 counterclockwise. And these are very, very gentle movements. I'm not gripping, I'm not holding on. I'm basically mostly moving the skin. And then if your dog is trying to pull away, move their head, I just let them. So I don't actually hold on to the ear, because then we're starting to play tug of war and the relaxation goes out the window. Once we did our circles, again, just like the top of the head and a lot of course, areas in the body, the ear has a lot of acupressure points. It has a lot of shiatsu reflexology points. And even though we might not know what each of these points is about, massaging those points will still have a balancing effect on the dog. So what I like to do is imagine that the base of the dog's ear is kind of like the sun. And then I gently start at the base and so I hold the ear flap between my 2 fingers and run my fingers to the outside of the ear. And I do that along the whole ear. And basically that way you're massaging all those points, all those reflexology points, and a lot of the dogs benefit greatly from that. It actually helps to release a lot of the tension in the head and the neck. So just doing that is a fantastic way to relax all the way up to the shoulders. 2 more techniques for you. One still left on the head, and this is the masseter. So this is kind of the joint right here that, for us very often is quite tight. And then with dogs chew to release stress. So chewing is a huge stress releaser for them, and we can actually simulate that and help them access that same state by massaging the jaw. So you'll find these muscles, the masseters, if you run your hands straight down from the ears and just at the corner of their mouth. They're flat, big flat muscles. And all you want to do is, by using the tips of your fingers, just gently rub those muscles in a circular motion. Again, very, very little pressure. This is really, you just want to feel the skin moving under your fingers. So that's another one that a lot of dogs enjoy. And the last one is working on your dog's paws. And this is another tricky one. Not all dogs enjoy having their paws massaged. However, it's a great, great tool for desensitization. So if you try to touch your dog's paws daily, it might only last a second, but hopefully build up. Then you're going to have a much easier time with any nail trims, any shaving, anything that you need to do around their paws. So for dogs, and I guess you can't really see Rocco's paws here. Here we go. I usually start with just asking for a paw and hanging out here for a little bit, and Rocco's like, okay, that's quite all right. And then I'll cover the paw with my other hand and start doing gentle compressions. And this might be all that your dog is comfortable with. And then if they're enjoying that, I'll start massaging each of the digits. So I'll gently rub them. I'll take them through the range of motion, flexion, extension, up, down, up, down. Then if that's too much, I'll go back to the compressions. And then work with the next digit, up, down, rub it gently. And I'll work my way through all the digits. And then the big paw pad at the back, I'll just spend a little bit of time massaging that in circular motion. Then I'll take the whole paw up, down, flexion, extension, like so. And then I'll finish with gentle compressions. This, I know for those whose dogs hate having their paws touched, they're kind of in disbelief, but this is extremely, extremely relaxing once your dog gets used to having their paws handled. And on top of that, it has great benefits for husbandry. So that's the techniques I've got for you guys today.